Let's turn to former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who also serves as the World Health Organization Ambassador for Global Health Financing, who joins me now. Good to have you on again, Mr. Brown. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Nick.
You may recall it was just last month that you hinted at this problem. It's fair to say we've not necessarily always been on the same political page, Gordon Brown, but you are absolutely right. It gives you no pleasure. But these are the strains you were warning about.
And the real problem now is that while we are right to tell people to vaccinate and we're right to tell people to get tested if there's any problem, and I think the advice that is going out from the government and from every medical advisor is the right one for Britain, we've really got to apply the same lesson to the rest of the world, because if the disease spreads there, as it seems to be doing, and variants development, it comes back to haunt us here. So vaccination is the answer, and more testing is the answer in Africa and low-income countries as well, in our interests as well as in their interests. And what worries me is that we've been too complacent about the distribution of vaccines. We've got into a position where 3% of low-income countries have been vaccinated, but 70% or so in Britain. And that's just such a wide divide that it must be one of the reasons why these countries are so little protected against new variants.
Do you think hoarding is going on in the UK and elsewhere in the West?
There's no doubt that we've been stockpiling, and you can call it hoarding as well. Look, 6 months ago, we were producing 500 million vaccines a month across the world. Now that we're producing 1.5 billion, it will soon be 2 billion. So there are enough vaccines around the world. We'll have manufactured 12 billion vaccines by the end of the year, enough to vaccinate every adult twice over. The problem is that most of these vaccines have gone to the richest countries. So nearly 90% have gone to the G20 countries and only 10% to the other 170 countries. And that's what's causing this massive inequity. We know that vaccination is one of the answers to this virus, but we haven't made that vaccination available to all the countries who need it. And so as long as we continue to hoard it, there will be vaccines wasted in the West that could have saved lives in the rest of the world. And one group, Affinity, a very good data research agency, says 100 million vaccines will have to be destroyed in the West over the next few months, simply because they passed their use-by date and we haven't sent them out to people who need them.
Some people might be saying, but we don't know whether the vaccine actually tackles the Omicron variant or strain. Why does Gordon Brown want them shipped out there if it doesn't necessarily fight against it?
Yeah, I've said all along that we're waiting for information about this new variant. We don't know how lethal it is, and we don't yet know whether it's susceptible to treatment by this new vaccine. But what all the medical advice is telling me, and this is medical advice across the world, that you are far better protected, whatever the variant, by getting yourself vaccinated with the present vaccine that's available. In other words, you will be better able to withstand this new variant if you're vaccinated. And this message must go out in Britain, because there's too many people who've resisted vaccination so far. But it's also got to go out to the rest of the world. So there is no obvious solution, of course, if the variant is insusceptible to this vaccine. We'll have to get a new vaccine. But we do believe that you are better protected if you have vaccine in you rather than if you have not, even if you're facing the new variant.
Noting what you're attempting to do today as a former Prime Minister, how is this message to be got to the current Prime Minister in your view, Gordon Brown?
Well, I'm sorry that Boris Johnson made a mistake on Saturday when he said that Britain was leading the world in distributing vaccines to the poor countries. It's simply not true. We've provided only 11% of the 100 million vaccines we've promised. America, for example, has provided 25%, and it's promised far more, 1 billion vaccines. And so has the European Union. So we're behind, and we've got to catch up. So we shouldn't be stockpiling where there are unused vaccines. And remember, all my figures take into account that people are going to get boosters and that children are going to get vaccinated at some point. And therefore, these figures are excess to that number. And these are definitely unused vaccines that are available. And I think he was wrong to say that the problem in Africa is the lack of take-up, that people are not willing to get the vaccine. Of course, there's anti-vaccine protests in every country, and a lot of people have been taken in by them. But the real problem in Africa and the low-income countries is the lack of supply. I mean, after all, only about 3% of all vaccines that have produced have gone to Africa, despite the fact it's got 1.3 billion people. And I'm saying all this not because I'm just interested in Africa. I'm interested in the whole world. And if we cannot protect ourselves by stopping the spread of vaccines in Africa, of viruses in Africa, is going to affect us back here. This is the real problem. This is a worldwide issue. You're not safe until everybody's safe.
New measures coming in England, the wearing of face masks, and obviously more countries from Southern Africa being added to the list. Appropriate measures in your view, Mr. Brown?
Yes, you've got to take measures. I mean, I think from September, the SAGE group of medical advisors has been telling us that we need to be more vigilant about the use of masks, and I think it's obviously right to do so. Whether we'll have to go further, and I think we probably will, than simply public transport and shops, it is an issue for the next few days. And of course, in other parts of the United Kingdom than England, more strenuous measures have been taken. But of course, the big message is get yourself vaccinated. And I hope there'll be an announcement today that the booster will be available to a far wider range of people as quickly as possible. And the other piece of advice, which of course is true of the whole world as well, is get yourself tested, because lots of people are walking around with this disease and don't know sometimes that they have it, and yet they are passing it on to other people.
Where would you be on schools, Mr. Brown? There's a suggestion that they might close early. There's a suggestion we go back to the days of where pupils have to self-isolate for 10 days if they prove positive.
Well, one of the problems about schools, and I'm also the UN Special Envoy in Global Education, and we've been facing this problem around the world, is that if you want to be safe and take action to restrict people going to school, you've got to be able to provide something in its place. And we still have not cracked this, not in Britain and not in the rest of the world. Online education and teaching out of school has not got to a level that you can be satisfied that people are not losing valuable education time. So you want to keep the schools open as long as possible. But of course, in schools in Scotland, masks are being worn. And I think it's important that school kids also have to wear masks. We'll have to consider the age at which injections are given as well.
Got to push you a little bit on that, the importance of wearing masks. And yet we saw a Prime Minister in a hospital a couple of weeks ago not wearing a mask, and on a train in Manchester not wearing a mask. What are the optics of that in your view, Mr. Brown?
Well, all people make mistakes, and of course you've got to understand that on one occasion at least you've got to be forgiving. But I don't think that Conservative MPs should make a practice of trying to show that they're not wearing masks when the general advice is that you must wear masks, and at least we'll be safer because of this. But again, I come back to the advice. Social distancing will be necessary, obviously, in certain cases. Hand washing is really important. Wearing of masks is part of the protection that you've got. And I do think if people want to avoid the same kind of Christmas that we had last Christmas when things had to be postponed, we've got to take this advice and take it up very quickly. And I hope that even before the legal requirements come in tomorrow, I think people should be wearing their masks today.
But if people don't heed the warning that you actually gave me over a month ago, never mind this Christmas, Mr. Brown, can I put it to you that if we don't tackle issues in parts of Africa, we could start worrying about Christmas 2022?
And this is what I say in an article in the Independent that is published today, that if we can't crack this problem, that we have a world that is half vaccinated and not fully vaccinated, then the disease will ultimately spread, and there will be more new variants, and it will come back to bite us, even in countries where we've had 3 vaccinations or even more vaccinations to protect ourselves. We cannot be safe until everybody's safe, and I'm afraid that everybody will live in fear of this disease until nobody lives in fear of this disease in any part of the world.
Lastly, just to lift the mood a bit, I always check the football results before we speak, and a healthy away win for Race Rovers, promoting them. Is it to the 4th round of the Scottish Cup now, Mr. Brown?
Well, that was the Scottish Cup, and we're doing well, but we're also joint top of the league in the Championship, and I'm hoping against hopes that are usually dashed that we can get promotion to the Premier League. I'm still a season ticket holder of Race Rovers and will continue to be all my life.
Good luck with that. And finally, I had to recall some years ago when I heard the current Prime Minister start delving into the rather colourful world of Peppa Pig. And I was reminded, I don't know if you remember this, 11 years ago, that you had a bit of a brush with Peppa Pig. Do you remember this, Gordon Brown?
I remember all these instances. Look, if I were to go back on some of the mistakes that you make when you're in politics, or some of the some of the errors that happen. It would be very embarrassing.
I've got to share with you a story. I think that you hopefully with Peppa Pig was going to appear at a Labour election event or whatever it was. I have to tell you, I was doing a TV interview that lunchtime, and Andrew Neil, a man you know well, came in cuddling a Peppa Pig doll. No one had told me what had happened to the Labour Party, so I just thought Andrew had been working a bit too hard cuddling Peppa Pig.
Maybe Andrew had joined the Labour Party.
No, that would be a seismic event, I sense.
Absolutely, but Peppa Pig's a big export, and Boris Johnson at least got that message across, even when he was shuffling his notes.